All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 40 of the Across Your Bow podcast with my very special guest, my man, Kamisamauri. What's up, Kami? How you been this week?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Yourself?
I've been in a car. We got back Sunday night and came back and did the front page charity stream for Toys for Tots last night. Raised $650 in 2 hours for Toys for Tots, which is fantastic. So thank you to the community for that. Do
That's awesome,
appreciate you
man.
guys showing up for that. Guys, y'all can hit up twitch.tv/Kami Samurai. If you guys want to go ahead with there, send him a follow, and then at Kami Samurai TV over on the Twitter. All right, so let's jump right into it, man. How have you been, dude? It's
Dude,
been
I've
a
been
while.
good. Yeah.
It's been a while since we actually had a conversation. This is your first appearance here on the Across Your Bow podcast.
Yeah. Originally, we tried when I was at Ouija, right? And we just couldn't get the schedule to work. Just couldn't find the time.
You
So
guys got
happy to be here.
extremely busy right around the time that I was asking you to jump on the cast. But that's not to say that you haven't done a couple of podcasts in your time.
Just a few, right?
Just a few. Tell them a little bit about it.
Hi, man. Kalorn. When we were an OPG. I mean, this was what 3 years ago now.
That was man OPG man. I remember those days.
Back at I mean, that's 3 years ago. Kalorn asked me to start a podcast, and we wanted to talk things ships related every week and talk about patches and everything. And at the time, we both wanted to become CCs, so that was part of the goal. That happened. I was a super tester before that, so a lot of experience with the game. But yeah, the podcast before, the Warships podcast, it's kind of sad they're no longer going because,
Yeah.
Kalorn, stopped and I stopped and
Kalorn's
Vanessa got
unnecessary.
busy and yeah, it happens,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of episodes, but it was a lot of fun, and it's cool that you got a podcast rolling. And I think there's somebody near you that does a podcast. I remember a while back they did it, but I don't know if they still roll on.
Well, it's just something. This particular podcast, I'd approached a couple of other streamers to do it with me, but never really heard back. I had talks with one of them, never really manifested in anything, and I said, "Fine, I'll just do it myself." And then I started asking people if they wanted to jump on the podcast. So we had a couple of guys here from the stream early on, and then once I made community contributor, I had access to other guys. And so we'll rotate it out, man. New people last week, like I said, Mr. Moto was on. Talked to him for a while. I know I have Overlord Bo coming on in January. As this is kind of an impromptu cast, since I hadn't planned on anything between last week and January because of Christmas and the holidays, how it goes. But I really thank you for hitting me up and saying, "Hey, put me on the cast," and we did it very quickly. So
I figured it was a good time to be on the cast with all the fun that's going on right now, right?
absolutely, and we'll get into some of that fun here in a minute. All right, boys, a little bit of news: Pan-Asian battleships have now been spotted out there. Tier 9 one. Don't ask me what their names are because I really didn't look into it too deep. But Pan-Asian looks like the Izumo to me. And from some of the early gatherings of what I've heard is that it's pretty decent. I mean, it kind of plays exactly like the Izumo does, and if it does, then I know I'm going to enjoy it because I love the Izumo. What do you think about the Izumo and the idea of these Pan Asian ones?
I think it's kind of lazy because it's basically a carbon copy.
Copy pasta.
When you think about it, the Zumo was also a paper design that really didn't make it very far. So they're copying a paper design to give to the Pan Asian line to give it a battleship. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the problem that you have is if it's a lone battleship, you got to have a captain for it. That can't really share a captain with any other ships in that line. So it's kind of a odd duck, I guess, to say the least.
There's also another one out there called Sun Wukong. I'm assuming it's Chinese, since that's where that comes from.
I mean, Wukong is typically represented as like a monkey,
Right.
in in a Chinese mythology or whatever. So it's kind of cool, I
The
guess.
Monkey King. How that translates into a boat, I don't know, but it's supposedly on. I have not even loaded up ships today, so it's supposedly on our testing abilities now. So maybe we'll look at that a little bit later on tonight. I don't know. As for any other news, there's really not much left. Rank season's still going on. You guys got about a week left. You touched any of it?
I think I'm at rank 7. I've only played maybe 20 games, so
Yeah.
I just don't really have the drive anymore to play ranked. I mean, I get on, play a couple games a day, I ranked, and that's about it. Get to where I get, and that's it. I think last season I got to rank 3 with like a 65 or 70% win rate. Just never had time to finish it. So
It's fair enough. I know myself, I got to rank 5 in 44 games this year, or this season, and
it's good.
then spent another 60 games staying at rank 5. So I've not been real happy with my production. I've made it as high as 4. I don't know about that. This is probably the most unique season that I've seen where my teams just throw more than I've ever seen them throw. We have 500-point lead, 2 caps, and they go pushing in instead of waiting. So I don't know. I don't know.
Well, it's that mentality of getting kills, right? Like
Yeah.
looking at the map and looking at the points is quote unquote boring, right? People wanna get those kills when all you got to do is just sit there, and win the match. There's more ways to win the game than killing the enemy team. And
Absolutely.
I think a lot of players forget that point.
I do as well see a lot of people not understanding that you don't have, number one, you don't have to cap early. There's a 20-minute game you can play for long, and knowing how to secure a victory from a winning position. I think a lot of people just like you said, they just kind of like, I got to get those kills. I got to get my damage. My PR rating's too low.
Yeah, what I find interesting about ranked, and I've seen it more than once in the last few ranked seasons, and it wasn't as prevalent as before, is the amount of comebacks, right? Typically, in ranked, a team loses a couple ships early on, and the match is over. But lately, in the last few seasons, like you said, people have gotten over aggressive, or they don't understand how to close out the game, and they'll go fishing for kills, and pretty soon the enemy team's killed a couple ships, and now you're losing, and your team's out of position, right? Because you were too busy chasing, trying to get damage, trying to do whatever you want, and pretty soon now you're losing. You can't get back in the position, and you lose that match where it was clearly 100% a win, and that's it's frustrating as an experienced player, and I think the most frustrating part about ranked is people just don't like to listen, right? Like you try to give advice, you try to give positive reinforcement, and people just kind of go off and do their own thing, and it's hard to deal with sometimes, right?
Absolutely. I know I've said absolutely twice now. We're got somebody give me a counter on absolutelys later on. But I totally agree. It's very frustrating for somebody who's been around as long as we have to see the biggest part about it is just like we're all trying for the same goal. We're all trying to rank out, and then when people just have that same mentality of we need to win this game, forget playing for your star, play to win, instead of play to not lose. And I find that very frustrating when you're out there doing what you can to make the team better and to put your team in a position where you can win the game, and they're just like, man, I don't care. Or at least that's the opinion that I get.
I think it's also ship choice, right? As the game has evolved, there's a lot more ships to choose from, and there's a lot of ships now that aren't necessarily good team ships, right? They're good damage farming ships. They're good, ships that you can boost your numbers. Perfect example is the small Linsk. The small Linsk is one of those ships that you can go out blindfolded and put up 150K,
Easy
right?
peasy.
I mean, easy, but that ship cannot carry a game.
No.
It is
thing
not.
with
It
the
is
British battleships. They can't carry games either.
I mean, you can go out there and put out tons of damage, but when push comes to shove, and you need to win a game, they're just not able to do it.
I've always had this mentality with ranked seasons. When you're playing as a battleship, you want to be able to instantly knock out your enemy. Now, with the way that the pin mechanics have changed, and the way that they're actually, you have to go through this amount of armor where it wasn't that way before to do citadels or get anything done. You're not seeing a whole lot of depth striking anymore, and that is, I think that's detrimental to a battleship's case of winning the game, but it also detrimental to the team because you're not taking those boats out of the way. You have a limited opportunity, and you need to make as much of that opportunity as you can. and the boats just aren't there anymore.
Well, I think part of it too is, like you said, the switch in armor. You start thinking about ships like the Smolensk and the Worcester and ships like that. They don't have very much armor, right?
True.
So battleships, against heavy cruisers still do pretty well
Agreed.
because they have that armor that activates those shells. But against those light cruisers, I mean, if you're not within that like 13 to 16 kilometer range, my kid's going crazy in the background. Sorry about that. That 13 to 16 kilometer range, it's really tough for a battleship to do anything to a small length besides overpins. It's that sweet spot now,
Yeah.
and that's tough because detectability of ships is good. Cruisers is really good at tier 10. So I don't know. Battleship players, you have to take advantage of having good battleship players on your team, especially ones You need to make sure they stay alive. You need to make sure they have vision to shoot things. There's a lot more that goes into a ranked team than just that battleship missed. It's like, well, if that battleship can't see anything, what do you expect that battleship to do?
I totally agree. I know I usually play destroyers when I'm in rank season. 52 is my choice for tier 10. Just love the utility and what it's able to do with its AP. It is not a very good choice when you're going up against a daring or a Kleber. Of course, nothing's really good against a Kleber, but if you are smarter than that other person, or you have better positions, or you have help, you can do very well. And this is where I like to rely on at least one other person with me. Come with me over here. Let's go do this. Let's go do this together. And to my own team's detriment, or to the team mentality, I went over on Greece, and I go over to AB. I don't know, the two caps on the right hand side, and that's where that map is won, because A on the left hand side is just a stall. That's all it is you're stalling. You don't ever really get good position until late when your cruisers decide to push up around a corner. So AB is where it's won on that map, in my opinion. And if you can play that side well, get them while they're coming around that first corner with your hydro, maybe even throw torps in that lane where they're driving at you. You can really turn the game instantly into your favor just by putting down one destroyer of however many. So yeah, it's all on what you know, who you know, and I guess to a certain extent who you're playing with. I think that's.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, but the funny thing about ranked, and I've noticed this, and I've played ranked since first season. Is typically when I get on a team that has a bunch of players that I know, we lose. I don't know what it is, but like I remember a couple seasons ago. I mean, like I had somebody from 007, a guy from 07, a guy from BN, a bunch of hurricane level teams, teams that play all kinds of competitive modes, and we got our butts kicked.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that players have to realize is, when it comes to ranked, is yes, at some point you do have to turn on the save a star mode, but at the beginning of the match, everybody's on equal footing, right? Like if you get that early kill on a DD or something, that game should be won. And don't get me wrong, like a lot of things happen in the game, right? Cruiser gets dev struck, battleship eats a bunch of torp. We all have seen everything happen, but it's like work together, play the map. If you're in a DD, like you said, like you play the 52. That's your your concealment isn't as good as some of those other DDs. So the 52 though has a great utility, right? You got the hydro, you got the AP, you got a lot going for you, that if you catch another DD out, you can manhandle that DD, minus the club air, which I don't get me started on that ship, because the ship is just, it's balanced, right? Like
it's extremely strong, man. It's extremely strong, and a lot of people. I remember when the Kleber was coming out, how this is just ridiculously bad, and everybody was like, they're all bad because they don't have smoke, and I still argue that 9 and 10 is the best thing that they've done. Everything else below that, I don't even want to play it because it's got single gun turrets. But that's another story. But yes, very strong, really, really high damage, especially with the reload booster. You can get out a lot of shots very quickly and just pretty much devastate any other DD out there.
Well, I'll admit it. That's what I've been playing. That's what I've been playing this season. And anytime you catch anything other than another club air out in the open, if you catch a Shimakaze or you catch a Gearing, and they don't instantly smoke. Like they try to fight you. I mean, you just wipe the floor with them. I mean, 2, 3K salvos every couple seconds is just it's really hard to deal with. And it's funny too because and you're not afraid to fight them because you have tons of HP. You have the unique French way of the damage is separated on the ship, right? The layout of the ship where it has that weird layout for the saturation.
Mm-hmm.
So you could take a lot of damage. I mean, plenty of times I was getting hit with HE shells and it wasn't doing any damage.
Right.
And then you just fight them. And if you're in a Shimakaze, you're in a gearing, and you're running radio location or something, and there's Kleber on the other team, don't get caught by them because they'll wreck you.
Generally, Cleavers, from my experience this season, have been going to the outsides. They've been going to the aforementioned grease map. They've been going to that double side cap, trying to get to the outside. On north, they're going to the far left from the bottom, whatever cap that is, and they're playing those. That's their bread and butter. Outside like a cruiser, playing it like a Zao, long range HE spamming, and not only HE spamming, but my God, does that thing set a lot of fires too, especially with that new captain.
Well, and the AP as well. If you're in a cruiser and you get caught sitting there broadside, I mean, it's rough for you.
Yes.
And very rarely has there been a ship in the game. I think old Kavarovsk was probably the last one that I can remember that you were willing to just go fight a cruiser in a DD. Very rarely is there a DD that you're just like, let's go fight this Des Moines. But in the Kleber, you don't care. Like you just sit at 12, 13 kilometers and fight a Des Moines all day long, dodging. And it's really frustrating to any cruiser that has a lot of that high arcing shells. Now, the one ship that I will tell you that I have not had a lot of success against is the Moskva, just because of how fast those shells are. You don't get the same time to wiggle.
That's the one thing about the Russian boats is every boat they have some of the highest velocity shells, and even playing against the Kremlin or something like that in a cruiser, or playing against a Moskva in a cruiser, and you're actively dodging these shots. As soon as you see that puff of smoke, you're making your move. It's to no avail because you're just getting pegged.
Well, they had the best Navy, Venom. They had the best Navy,
of course, as we saw by their recent fire that they had on their big Admiral Kuznetsov aircraft carrier.
Wasn't that perfect timing for what happened?
No, absolutely it was. All right, as for the rest of the news, like I said, there's really not much. So let's jump on into the 9 questions of averageness. Since this is your first trip here on the Across Your Bow podcast, we'll go ahead and see if we can't get to know you just a little bit better. Guys, we're hanging out with my man Kami Samurai, twitch.tv/Kami Samurai, or at Kami Samurai TV over on the Twitter. First things first, man. How the hell did you find World of Warships?
Actually, I started playing World of Tanks back in 2015 now.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was on the website, they had this like banner going that said, World of Warships. Closed beta is about, it's going to start in, I think it was March of that year. And so I just signed up for the closed beta and actually got in, and it's just kind of, I guess, dumb luck, that I got into, ships, because I wasn't really looking for a ships game. I just happened to be, on the World of Tanks website, and they had this banner. So I was just like, all right, well, we'll give it a shot. We'll try to get into that closed beta, and been playing it ever since.
I know I attempted to get into the closed beta, but I was not accepted, so I had to come out after a while after it had already been out. So you started out playing tanks, moving over to ships. What was your decision? What were your motivations to actually throw up a show, put it out there, put yourself out there as a streamer?
Well, funny. When I played in closed beta, I admit this readily. I was a 53, 54%, maybe even 52% at the time. But as I learned the game, as I got more skilled with the game, I wanted to help other people get more skilled at the game, because the one thing I knew was lacking with a game like this was the tutorials and how to help new players. And give positive advice. At the time, there wasn't very many ship streamers back in the day, right? I mean, there was, I couldn't even tell you. Brain Cage, Me Jash, some of the Euro guys. That was about it, right? Earl maybe.
Very seldom Earl, but yeah.
Yeah, there was very few that really stream ships, and I really wanted to try to help. And at the time, I was working for my dad, and I wanted to be home more, so just kind of thought, hey, let's try this streaming thing. And I had a perfect game to do it. Ships was new at the time, and jumped right in.
Well, I mean, there you go. That kind of answers the next question too, which is, as you are a Twitch streamer again, what do you hope to contribute to the community?
Um, just tips and tricks, and good gameplay. That's typically what I try to contribute for everyone. If people have questions, try to answer them honestly. And I make mistakes. I mean, stats aren't everything, right? We still got to play the game. That's the thing that cracks me up. It's like everyone's like, look at your stats, blah blah, blah. It's like I still have to play the game every time for those stats. I still make plenty of dumb mistakes.
Yeah, we all do.
On stream, off stream, we all do, right? But I think the biggest thing is I just wanted to contribute, some positivity to the community, and help other players get better at the game.
Well, in this world where positivity is very scarce, in the current situations, positivity is always a nice, refreshing thing to see when I go into a show. So, congratulations on that. Number 4, what has been your biggest setback, and how have you overcome it? Now, this could be streaming wise, it could be professionally, whatever.
I think we'll go streaming wise. I think burnout. Playing ships.
Nonstop, every day.
Yeah, no, about that grind.
I do know about that grind.
I think that was the biggest thing, was losing the fun in the game. It became more, it was quote unquote a job because, streaming, but it started to feel that way as well. It didn't feel like a game anymore. It just felt like, get up, do ships for 8 to 10 hours, off ships, do that, every day over and over and over. And ships became less fun, didn't have any fun playing, and I think overcoming it was taking a break and then coming back and playing it, and having a lot more fun with it, realizing, it just, if you have fun with it and what you're doing, it'll be successful as well.
No, I've streamed ships for about 3.5 years now, 4 in June. So I understand. I've taken 2 really long breaks, about a month at a time, go and play other things. First one was Star Trek Online, and then we went over and played World of Warcraft Classic when it popped out for that month. And now we're back into ships, and it is nice to step away from it, especially when you're sitting there and you're seeing the inconsistencies. And of course, the more you play, the more you see, and how frustrating it can be. So let's move on to question number 5. All right, so you started out as a player, then you went to a streamer, then you got a job at Wargaming. Now you're back to being just a streamer again. What have you learned in your journey about our community, and what has changed in our community and in the streaming community?
Oh man, that's a good question. So yeah, like I said, I started out closed beta, became a super tester, went from super tester to the CC with the podcast. Yeah, and then that led me to getting hired and moving to Austin. Um, and then recently I left, just personal reasons, and then became a streamer again. But yeah, so what I learned about the community, it's definitely different stepping onto the other side of the fence. When you go to work for the game, you learn a lot about just people in general and how angry people get over things. I happen to get to experience a lot of the big changes that has happened while I was an employee. So there was a lot of vitriol, and as someone that was a forward facing and part of the community team, you just kind of have to do your best to talk to people, logically, calmly, make sure that you explain your points correctly, you know. And what I learned about the streaming community, man, when I came back to streaming, man, they welcome me back with open arms, and I think that's the greatest thing about the ships community as a whole is, they do a really good job of supporting their streamers, their CCs in other ways, like Little White Mouse, she does all the write ups and everything. The ships community does a great job in supporting their people.
Yeah, I know my 2 or 3 times I've left and come back, the community itself, the chat has just always been there, and it's a testament to them that they actually approve of what you are and what you do and who you are. So it's always a nice feeling, and a nice reception when you do come back to something like that. So what would you say makes you stand out? I mean, what makes you different? Why the hell should we pay attention to you, Kami?
Well, I think I bring a different perspective. Going the route of super tester, CC, employee, back to streamer. I can bring a different perspective, I think, than a lot of people can. Probably everybody, minus, I couldn't tell you anybody that has, gone to work for ships, can't, and then started streaming again that I know of. But I think, and also just gameplay, high level, typically high level battleship cruiser gameplay. I do dabble in DDs, but I mean, I would just say different perspective and high level gameplay.
Outstanding. So moving on in there, who influences you as a person to go to that next level, i.e., a particular person, an artist, a book, a movie, something that really inspired you?
Man, I think, to be honest with you, probably, I follow a lot of Dwayne Johnson, you know, and everybody knows him as The Rock or
The
whatever.
Rock.
But
Yep.
yeah, he does a lot of inspirational stuff. He's a genuine dude, and I think that's someone that you could look at, his Instagram or his Twitter or his Facebook or whatever, and you can see that, every day he's helping somebody, you know, giving positive vibes. And I think that's someone that you could look up to and try to emulate in your own life. Is, even if the day sucks, even if you're having a really bad week or whatever, you can always just kind of look at it, that, and kind of just take it to yourself and realize, hey, life could be worse. Let's see what we can do and make it better.
Uh, the Rock, fantastic guy. Never had an opportunity to meet the guy, but I have watched a lot of his videos now. How much of that is put on, I don't know. I think it's pretty genuine, from my take as well. So you could do worse. I mean that's a pretty good inspiration there. That guy. All right, moving on. Question number 8: any tips in streaming to an aspire streamer or ship streamer?
Man, I would tell you the number one tip I'll give you is have a schedule. And I think you know this one too, right? Have a schedule. I think I think is the biggest thing, because you're not going to get repeat viewers if you're not there at the time you say, right? Like and I'm not saying come in with a set schedule. What I'm saying is find a time that works for you, right? Find that time where you can balance playing the game. And I'm not saying stream at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you can, but if you're on NA, that's not going to do very well, just because there's not a lot of people, right? Unless you're going to play. Yeah, but you're a little different though. You're established, right? I'm talking for
For a new guy. Yeah.
a new guy, playing at 2 a.m. I don't know if that's what I'd recommend, but definitely a schedule. Just go in there, try different times, find out what fits for you. Is it before dinner, after dinner, mid morning, whatever it is, and then try it out for a few days and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, switch it up. Don't commit to anything until you're ready to figure out where you're going.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's people that come up to me and I'll be like, "Yo, how's the show going?" It's like, "Man, I'm really thinking about going over here to the Mixer or making a swap from Mixer to Facebook or all these other things." And I'm like, "Well, what's your schedule like?" And they're like, "Well, I'm streaming every other Tuesday for about 2 hours on the full bloon," and they never really establish themselves and they don't really saturate the market with their product, which is their shows. And so finding a time, and I know for me, catching the tail end of the afternoon guys, and then outstreaming everybody into the wee hours of the morning, 3-4 o'clock in the morning. That was where I established myself. So I know if you can find something like that where you can continually make some growth, maybe not all at once, but a couple of weeks here, a couple of weeks there, you never know, and eventually it'll work out for you. I know, Kami, you made partner right before you got you went to work for Wargaming, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually made partner the same day that I was down in Austin casting King of the Sea. I think it was 5 at the time.
Right.
And all that news kind of came the same way. Job, partner, all that stuff kind of came at the same time. It's kind of one of those days.
Really good timing for everybody. Excuse me.
Yeah.
All right, and number 9, what is your biggest tip? The biggest tip for World of Warships and new players?
Biggest tip: learn from your mistakes. Is my biggest tip. Don't be afraid to analyze your own game. it's easy to try to go out and emulate someone else, the Flamus or the Meat Jashes or the Venoms, whoever's playing the game. But if you're a new player, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. You're not going to be able to do that. You don't have the experience. So you learn from the mistakes, try different ships at the beginning of the game, learn how different ships play. And also, don't go and be one of those guys or ladies that buys a premium right off the bat. I mean, those kind of two tips are what I would tell you right away is learn from your mistakes and don't just go buy a premium because you're going to get into games where there's a lot more experienced players. They're going to beat on you and you're going to get frustrated. You're going to be like, I wasted money. Right. So I would definitely tell you to try different lines at the beginning of the game. And this is one of those games that's not like a first person shooter. It's not like a game that you can play a couple hours. You're going to pick up everything in this game. This game takes hundreds and hundreds of games to learn to play correctly. So don't think after 50 games and your stats don't look that great that you're struggling. Just learn. Oops, I sailed broadside when I shouldn't be broadside. I need to learn how to aim better. There's all kinds of different things that you need to do. But what I would just tell you is learn from your mistakes and don't buy a premium right away. Those are the two things I would tell any new player.
I think learning from your mistakes and being able to analyzing your own gameplay takes time. You're not going to be able to figure out it all right away. Like it took me a very long time before I was able to. Okay, what did I do here? Why did I die there? I knew that guy was there. Why did I go around that corner? Blah blah blah. What could I have done different? And it took me a long time to realize that to even remember the situation that I was in after I was dead, and all the anger and stuff spits out there. So excellent tips.
Yeah, and I think one more quick one is read the map. Learn to read the map.
Mini-map.
I think even veteran players don't read the map. If you learn how to read that map, it'll keep you from being surprised a lot of the time.
That's generally my number one tip for new players is learn that mini map. Learn how to read it. Put those last known position markers and and the names on the mini map. Put those on there, and then your game will go up very quickly. All right, guys. So we're hanging out with Kami Samurai. You guys can hit him over at twitch.tv/Kami Samurai or at Kami Samurai TV over on the Twitter. You guys, I'm Sir Venom IK. You guys can hit me up at Sir_Venom_IK over on the Twitter as well. Guys, since we are talking to Kami, I will do a Q&A session toward the end of the show. So if you guys have any questions, please at Sir Venom right here in the chat. Or if you guys are over on YouTube, you guys can hit it up in the comment section below, and I'll get to it as soon as possible. All right, Kami, let's go right on into our first topic and pretty much our only topic here today. Rico Not So Suave. Now, you are in a pretty unique position, and we touched on it just a minute ago. You were around when the CV rework dropped, and you saw a whole lot of salty people sending messages and reading the forums and so on and so on. And so living through that and no longer being at Wargaming now, can you tell us a little bit about what they're going through?
So I've been through a few significant changes to the game when I was there. CV rework, of course, was the big one, right? That was the big one. You also had the gun bloom bug.
Mm-hmm.
You also had the announcement of submarines.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been through a lot of you've had all the Russian battleships. There's been a lot of stuff that has come out while I was there.
Right.
I would tell you right now, the community team is feeling the brunt of it. And you guys got to understand the publishing side, the community team, they are not the developers. They are not the producers. They are not the ones that make these decisions. They are the ones that have to try to pick up the pieces after the decision has been handed down. So people like Fim and the new guys, that have taken up the mantle on the NA side, those guys are just trying to do what they can to damage control what has happened. They're not the ones that have made these choices. But I will tell you when the CV rework hit, there was anger for months. Still it's a topic.
There still is, anger for now.
But I would tell you, don't be mad at the community guys. I mean, if you want to be mad at anybody, you need to be mad at the devs. You need to be mad at the producers, the people that make those decisions that say, "Hey, this looks like a good idea." Yes, the community team will have a little bit of say in it, but not a lot. They are there to talk to you guys. They are there to pass the word along to you. They're there to conversate with you. So do your best to conversate with them positively and politely. And you'll probably get some better answers than you think.
I think being down there and talking with Tim and Fim and talking with Sasha and this weekend while I toured the actual facilities, you could tell there's a little bit of tension. A little bit of tension in the offices, but it's nothing that they really have a control over. And I felt kind of bad for them, but then again, they are the face of the North American people, so they're going to feel that brunt, and maybe a little bit misplaced brunting, if that makes sense. I don't think it does, but anyway, I'm going to go with that. So let's jump into it. Puerto Rico. Number one, it's a brutal grind for anybody that doesn't want to put any doubloons value in. What are your initial thoughts?
Have the numbers been ran? Can you even finish it without?
You had to play a lot. You basically had to play every day for several hours to be able to do this.
Yeah, and I think the problem is the way they marketed it, right? I think from the get-go was, this could be a cool shipbuilding thing. You're going to be able to do this, but they left out the part where it's going to be a super grindy thing, and
right.
that apology tried to come out from Sub Octavian, and it just looked more like an ad to go buy boosters.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't buy any more.
Didn't buy any calming influence at all whatsoever. So the question is, I think the biggest confusion, excuse me, I think the biggest confusion that a lot of the community had is when they were watching people, when they were watching people do the public test realm servers or whatever it's called. When they were doing the public test servers, the prices were extremely different than what they are when they're actually released, which I think it confused and kind of alienated a lot of people. Okay, well, I'll be able to do some of this, but I'll still be able to throw money at it and finish it up on the things that I can't do. What are your thoughts on that particular part of it?
So typically on the public test, a lot of things are lowered. Like ranked battles on public test, you only need to win like 2 or 3 battles. It's basically because the public test doesn't get a lot of traffic.
Right.
I mean, anytime you're on there, I think anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 people at max, and the public test people got to realize for all the servers combined. So,
oh wow,
you're looking at 1,200 people.
So they don't have an opportunity to grind out the full thing, so they have to fudge the numbers a little bit to get it to where people can actually experience it, so they can test out the features or whatever they're trying to get tested. It's fair.
Yeah, it's all about the feature testing and less about the numbers. But what I'll say to that is, if anyone went into this thinking that getting a tier 10 from a quote unquote free event in the game was going to be easy, you're definitely fooling yourself.
Yeah, you're definitely going up the wrong direction. I can only give you my personal opinion here, and I'll ask for yours after this. But I'm okay with grinds. I mean, I come from Diablo. I come from Path of Exile. I said this last week on a podcast. I don't have a problem grinding because I actually have the time to grind. I can, at any point in time, 2 to 24 hours, I can throw down and start playing ships and really push forward and grind this thing out. Now, as it is, being a community contributor, they gave us like 24,000 doubloons. They said, okay, go get the first set of boosts and do whatever you want to with it. So I'm really not too upset at the amount of grind that it is. What do you think of the grind and the amount of dedication you have to put forth to get this?
So way back in the day, there was an event, the Pearl event, and I don't even know if you were around for that.
I was not, but that was for the Kamikaze R.
Correct. So way back in the day, I think that was like one of the first big events that they ever did.
Right.
After it was either before, I think it was after the ARP ships, but before anything else. And the ARP ships are a whole different story. But that event was very, very grindy. You had to play a lot. You had to play a lot every day. You had to place very high, and only a certain amount of people actually ended up getting that ship because you had to collect so many pearls. You had to reach certain milestones to get those pearls, and it was one of the first events that really kind of separated levels of play. Right,
Right.
the average player, it was a struggle. The above average player, some got it. The really good players got it pretty easy just because they played a lot. But that was really the first event that I would have to say was like this. But I feel like the grind, I don't have a problem with grinds. Like you said, when I used to play Call of Duty, I was one of those max prestige guys,
Oh, me
right?
too, yeah.
Diablo, I was one of those guys that ground rift levels forever, right?
Oh,
Any type of games, I don't have a problem with the grind. I think the biggest problem they have is the way they advertise it, right? I think it was misleading to the average player. I think that was the issue, was not the amount of grind, but the misleading of the amount of time it's going to take you to get to Puerto Rico. And I think it's even said in some, like, I think there was a YouTube video or something that they pulled down, and then there was also the Instagram, I think, said it as well. Focus on the Puerto Rico, you could do it, blah blah, whatever. But they kind of misled the public, and I think that's where a lot of the anger is coming from, right? Because most people have jobs, have kids, have lives outside of the game, and you just don't have time to grind every day.
I think. Do you think that this has come up? This has come up in the channel a couple of times, and through some of the community contributor discords that I've been a part of. As you know, you were part of some of those for a while. It's some of the. Do you think that wargaming now, with all this bad blood and just really, as you put it, vitriol that's coming from the community, do you think it's time for wargaming to actually hire up a PR section? Not just but like a public relations section, because this is a nightmare for them. And I know Sub Octavian, he's not the bestest conveyor of calmingness. And part of me was like, you just need to stop, bro. You just need to be quiet for a little bit and let somebody else do the talking. What do you think of that?
I think what would help more is just being honest with the way you're going to do something. If it's going to be a big grind, don't say it's going to be obtainable for everyone. Say, hey, look, this grind that we're going to do is going to be something that is going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of hours. And if you really want to get this ship and you don't want to put doubloons or dollars behind it, you got to understand it's going to take you a lot of time to do this. Now, just be honest, like, hey, if you do buy these boosters, if you do this or that, it's going to speed up the grind significantly and you'll be able to get the ship, but it's going to cost you money, right? Yeah. Don't come out and be like, hey, and they're actually, Wargaming does have a PR section, but they're not ships specific. They're basically for Wargaming as a whole. Wargaming specific. Right? Basically Wargaming relies on the community side to try to convey these messages. But really what happens is there's a huge, I would say, there's a slight disconnect between the marketing side, the publishing side, and the developer side, right? And decisions come from developers. It's their game. They make what they decide what happens, right? That's their
true.
That's their deal. And the marketing side has to take those ideas or developments that they're making and run with them and do their best. But I would say, just be more honest, because this last year for wargaming, especially for ships, has been rough.
Yeah, it's been very rough.
From the beginning of the year on, right? You had the CVs, you had the submarine announcement, you had clan battles getting jacked up, you had ranked getting jacked up, you had, all these
servers have been down. I don't know how many times.
You have all these different things that have hit, and you figure the one time a year that typically, and this wargaming around Christmas typically is pretty good. I mean, they typically bring in a grindy event like the PEF last year, right? It was a grindy event, but the PEF wasn't a ship that everybody wanted.
True.
Right? It was a ship that if you got it, you got it. If not, you're not. But
if you got it, you might have played it twice and then you put it away.
Yeah, but this was a ship that was hyped up. There was a lot of hype over it. Hey, it's a tier 10. It's, blah blah. It's going to be and I will give them this. That dockyard sequence of the building of the
It
ship
looks
is
great.
awesome.
It looks great.
I feel really bad that they wasted it on something like this debacle.
The only problem I have with the dockyard, it looks great. Everything works smooth, but once you see it once, are you really going to care?
That's another point, right? But that's why I'm saying like this event should have been an event that you made attainable for people, and you made it hit home. Because if you think about it this way: if the Puerto Rico would have been available for half as much earning as you needed now, how many people would you think would be complaining about it?
The same amount of people would complain about it. I honestly think the same amount of people would complain about it. We would see a lot more of them in games because there's whales out there, and we did the math on it. I did the math on it, Kami. $236 if you wanted to just to balloon it out.
But what if that was half of that, right? Because you think about how much does a tier 9 cost?
$70-$80. I think it's for the Alaska. I think.
Yeah, so I mean, you start extrapolating that out for a tier 10, blah blah blah, whatever to balloon value. That's math stuff. I don't have time to do that right now. But what I'm saying is, if it would have been half the cost, overall, not money wise, but I'm saying resource wise, I think there would have been less people saying, because yes, it still would have been a grind, but it would have been an attainable grind,
Yeah.
right? Like
anytime that you can get your hands on things, I think people. There's going to be the salty guys that still, they have a life and they can't play as much. They're still not going to be able to make that. Those guys will still complain. But for a vast majority, say 60% of the population, if it's attainable for them, I think we'll hear the complaining to a minimum.
And that's what I'm saying is, like, if the attainability was higher, I think there would have been a lot less complaining. And then on top of that, you start thinking, you wouldn't have had to have this nightmare that they're having right now, where everybody. I mean, I looked at their last YouTube video, the one that they reposted yesterday. I mean, it was like 3,000 down arrows, right? You look at Reddit, everything is memes, and all these different things just really just dumping on wargaming and how bad this has been, and that apology from Sub didn't help anything. It just made it worse. So I think if you're gonna make grindy events. I think grindy events are fine because everyone's playing the game, right? And everybody likes to have goals, whether it's the new shiny tier 10 or, you're grinding up for, the research bureau. Oh, there's another one. The research bureau was another thing that was.
Yeah, that's another thing that came out.
There's a lot of grindy things in the game that people don't have an issue with. Right. It's more of being honest about that this is going to be a grind. I think that's what made people mad.
I think, excuse me. I think that there's a lot of misconception about grinds versus obtainable things, and a lot of the complaining that I've been privy to. It's basically these guys are saying, I don't have the time for doing this, and I'm not going to spend this much money. Gimme for minimal amount of work. So I don't have really much sympathy for those particular people, but for the people out there that grind, it's like the guys that grind to rank 2 and then they're just unable to put teams together to finish it out. I feel bad for those guys, and they're generally decent players, but they just can't get the teams together to finish those small percentage of the players. But this one was designed for the 1%ers. I think that there's definite, I don't know. I consider myself a 1%er because I have the time to actually grind and time to actually play. This was designed for us, for us to actually go out there and grind this thing out and spend days and 32 days trying to finish this thing up.
Yeah, and I think timing of it is another thing, right? I mean, a lot of people have families and friends and everything that they're going to be spending a lot of time on the holidays with, so that cuts into it a lot. I just feel like, the people that have time to do this grind is a very small amount of people, and that's on any server. And I think the way they marketed this was very, very poorly done.
Yeah, I tend to agree. When you're out there, and some people, if you guys have blatantly lied to us, or you guys did it on purpose, blah blah blah, to hype this thing up, and then y'all throw this at us. I think there was I heard some lawyering up going on and everything. We're going to sue Wargaming. I'm like, for what? I mean, that'll never go anywhere, by the way. But just just the outrageousness of or not outrageous of the backlash that wargaming got. I think other than I think this is probably the biggest backlash that I've actually seen. And I know we're talking Smolensk, we're talking CV rework, we're talking stealth fire change, smoke change. These are all pretty big things that did have some semblance of a backlash for wargaming, but this has probably been the most intense.
I think it's the most intense because it has a lot to do with money, right? CV rework, they offered doubloon refunds,
Refunds, yeah.
right? The other stuff they've talked about how they're I mean I think they just changed the bloom thing, right? But this event I think sparked a lot of the outrage because the majority of the player base that is vocal don't get me wrong, we're gonna say this right now, it's the vocal player base, right? It are the people
Right.
that are speaking out, and the vocal player base is small, right?
Uh-huh. Vocal
You
minority.
know, it's definitely the minority, but there's also the silent minority, all that. But what I will say is these players that speak the loudest, and it helps that some of the CCs are very loud as well about it. But I think players have to realize that this event is not going to be for everyone. I'm personally not going to obtain the Puerto Rico because I don't have the time to do it. I don't have the time to play the event. Um,
Right.
do I think it? And to be fair, let me get this out of the way. The Puerto Rico is not a good ship,
No,
so
I
don't feel
agree.
like don't feel like you're missing anything if you don't. But what I will say is the only way wargaming, and I'm going to say this with a caveat, they may not care at all. This is the way they might want that event to run, and I wouldn't be surprised if next Christmas they do another event like this. Where it's a long grind. So be prepared for it. There's been a grind the last 3 years,
Yeah.
at least 3 years around Christmas that
Yeah.
have been long grinds. So be prepared for next year being the same thing.
There
It's
was
gonna be a long grind.
if I remember the first grind that I remember it was the alternate Turpitz camo.
Yes, it was like the Battle of the North Cape or
Yeah, and it
whatever.
was it was a campaign, and speaking of that, that's the last campaign they've ever brought out. That one, and then the Yamamoto campaign, the Japanese captain, but they have done nothing with that whole system, which I think is a mistake, and I think that they could take these and put it into take something like this, make it a Puerto Rico thing.
Well, I think the campaign, like the campaign you're talking about, I think kind of died when the early access stuff and the way they stuff like that works now is kind of taking that place, right? Um, but I don't know. The Puerto Rico is a situation that could have been avoided. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to be more situations with Wargaming and World of Warships that come out next year.
Yeah, we're just all kind of biding time until the next big thing. I tell you what, one thing that this Puerto Rico thing has done is kind of quieted a little bit, not too much, but quieted a little bit of the Smolensk talk, and then when the Smolensk came out, it quieted a little bit of the CV talk. It's still there, but it's still minor. It's definitely taken a back seat. Where do you if we were going to rate this, obviously I've already made my opinion clear of this has been like the biggest backlash, but of all the backlashes that you've been around for, where do you rate this one as?
Oh man, so I think that I rate this one still number 2 behind the CB work, and the only reason why I say that is that yes, this one's kind of came hot and heavy, but the CB rework backlash lasted for months, right? Like the CB, and it's still kind of going. Like people still aren't happy. You still see CVs.
Oh, I'm still not happy. I think number one, I think the CVs are boring. They pull you out of the game, and now you're just basically damage farming the entire game, and it's not a fun aspect of the game for me. That's been my stance since and I go in there and I play a couple hundred games or whatever since the reworks come back. I just don't enjoy them. There's other people out there that absolutely love them and adore them, and that's fine. Which leads me into a worry for when submarines come out and the initial backlash that you're going to get for that. And we all know that there's going to be a shit ton of backlash for when submarines come out. But my biggest worry is when you are limiting the hunting of the DDs or hunting of the submarines to only destroyers. Now, I know they made a change on that as well, but you're pulling the destroyers out of the game into their own little mini game, just like the CVs. And now, not only are you the only one that can hunt these things, now you're going to have to cap, you're going to have to spot, you're going to have to hunt down this thing, and you're going to have to hunt down a submarine all at the same time. I think it's putting too much pressure on players that, let's be fair, don't need to be playing DDs, and now they're going to have this whole other big responsibility out there. I think it's gonna cause a lot of problems with the way that the initially had come out. Now, with that being said, they did say that they were going to extend the sub hunting duties to light cruisers as well. So there's promise. There's a little bit of promise coming up there.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to do, right? Because to be honest with you, we all know CVs aren't balanced yet, and they'll never be balanced. You can't. The way the game is, you're not gonna be able to balance CVs. Then you're gonna add subs. My feeling on this is subs should stay in their own type of mode.
Permanently.
Whether some type of event mode, right? Like kind of
like that Halloween event.
Yeah, you have some type of mode that you have DDs in, right?
Right.
But if they get released to random battles, it's gonna be hell on DD. It's gonna be hell on light cruisers. I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll cross that bridge, when we get there. But I just feel like it's another thing being added to the game that could become a very big issue.
No, we kind of got off a subject here, but do you think that they actually learned their lesson? I mean, now they said they learned their lesson about the Puerto Rico grind, and they've also said that it is not going to change for the rest of this time. So if you guys are out there looking for a change for this grind, it is not going to happen. This one is here to stay for the next couple of weeks at least. Do you think that they actually learned their lesson coming off of this for the next event, as well as coming off of the CV lesson that they quote unquote said that they learned going into submarines? Do you think that they've actually learned something?
I don't know. I mean, what this comes down to is track record, right?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like Wargaming's track record this last year was, with a lot of the changes and things they've done, hasn't been very good. And that's coming from being an employee there, and then also just being a player. The track record is not very positive, right? Hey, you never know. Maybe 2020 they flip everything around and everything becomes better, and but there's a lot of fundamental things that need to be fixed before they're able to learn, quote unquote, learn from things, right? Do I think they've learned? I mean, I think they've learned that grinds like this should be few and far between, if ever again. I think they've definitely learned that after the backlash that they've received. But I think they've learned overall. I mean, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to say without seeing it, without seeing it, right? Like the proof, like that old saying is, the proof is in the pudding, and we're gonna have to see it.
Well, is it proof it's in the pudding, or is there a bunch of tapioca little balls hanging out of there that just randomly screw things up? But I totally agree. I want them to have learned their lesson. Now, they've said that when submarines release, it'll be in its own game mode for a while, and then they will slowly integrate it into the main course of the game. Honestly, I don't think it needs to be there. Personally, that's my own personal opinion, just from all the videos I watched. Recently watched an Arun video showing the damage that you can get to, how the submarines take a lot of splash damage from HE shells, and how they can really be dominated by anything, battleships, cruisers, destroyers. As long as you're hitting in this certain area, you can actually do a lot of damage to them. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, right? I mean, again, they announced that, I think, third set of testing, right, is what I saw the other day. Is what they announced
the third set of testing, and then they canceled the third set of testing because of some break in the gameplay. I don't know. I don't know the details, but they did say that they had canceled the most recent iteration of submarines, and they're going back to the drawing board a little bit.
I mean, I take that as a positive, right? Like if things aren't going the way you think they're going to go, and who knows, they come back and everything could be messed up again. But at least they're going back to the drawing board. I think that's shows that they learned something, right? What it is, we don't know.
Yeah, what it is, we don't
We're
know.
not privy to that, but at least they're stopping it before it gets out of hand, which is a good first step, right?
Absolutely. So back to the Puerto Rico. You and I both agree that the Puerto Rico is not that great. It's not that great of a ship. Do you think that this grind is worthy of that particular ship?
I don't think so. I honestly like I think the other rewards I think that you get along the way are better than just getting the ship. Than getting the ship in the end.
I tend to agree.
The ship. I mean, the ship is big. It is a massive target. It has terrible concealment. The guns are I find the guns to be pretty
Very inaccurate.
lackluster. Um, it's really like, to be honest with you, if you're going to spend money on a ship that you want to play it at a higher tier, just go get the Alaska. The Alaska does everything that the Puerto Rico does and better.
Yeah, totally agree. The Alaska is by far the better of these two ships. Uh, well, have we seen? You kind of touched on it when we talked about the when you talked about the Pan Asian battleships and on how we're just kind of copy pasting these things. And I know they have a load of opportunity to copy pasta a lot of things into this game. How many Fletcher classes did they make? How many are in the world that they can just stick another name on and give a little uniqueness to? Are we going to see more and more of these copy pastas in the future, do you think? And if so, other than the money factor, we want to copy pasta things. Massachusetts, Georgia, and Ohio. Why was that not a separate line by itself? Other than money, obviously it was a money thing.
Well, I mean, the way you look at it, right, from a development standpoint, the easiest thing to do is take a ship and down tier it, right?
Right.
Or make it completely the same model and then just change the way it works. For instance, the Alabama, Massachusetts, same model. I mean, same exact model. Just one is one, secondary build. The other is,
Not.
not,
Yeah.
it is set up differently, right? So I would think yes, you're gonna see a lot more copy pasta, as you say, ships, because they're easy to do. They're not time consuming, right?
Right.
Like the new Pan Asian battleship. It's just the Azuma,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
With Pan Asian flag on it. I mean,
Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of the flavor of what we've seen, as you see with the Pan Asian DD lines, the new European destroyer line has been announced as well, which we haven't talked about too much here, but we will here in a second. I don't know. Do you like the copy pasta? Now I know you said it's easy. And it makes them look like they're doing a lot of work when they're really not actually doing much, but they're still being able to put out content. In a way that maybe some of the newer people are like, oh, I don't really, they're not really seeing the sameness. But us old salts, us old salty dogs are seeing right through it.
Yeah, I think when it comes to coffee pasta ships, like you said, people that have played the game for a long time understand that a lot of these ships are copies. You just go down the line, Lazo, all those ships, right? West Virginia, all these ships have been are a hole or you better thank Senpai, thank my son.
Thank you, son. Thank you for the host, man.
Like it's the quickest way to get a new premium out, right? Quickest way to, I, and I hate to say it, but it is. It's the quickest way to get new premiums, right?
Right. Now,
It's take another ship and be like, hey, it's a new nation, right?
there you go. You just put a different flag on it. When are we going to see the? We've already seen one Pan American ship in the Nueve de Julio, which is just a legit Boise clone. It's actually, from what I understand in the history, is the actual Boise that they sold to wherever they sold it to. Where are we going? So basically, what he's saying, guys, is we're all going to see this stuff repeat itself over and over and over again. Now, uh, now this is conspiracy hat theory time. Put on your tinfoil hats, guys. In the history of games that I've been around, I've been around games since the '80s, man. I've noticed that there's a lot of companies that go out there and they make a lot of money. They show real good profit, and then they turn around and they sell the company. Now, this is the conspiracy hat question here. Do you think that this is a symptom of wargaming, that they are going to show that the game is making a lot of money and then dump it
I don't think so. I don't think that. I don't. They'll keep the game until it dies.
until they shut it down?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So let's move on in, guys. We're hanging out with my man Kami Samurai, twitch.tv/Kami Samurai, or at Kami Samurai TV over on the Twitter. I am Sir Venom IK. If you guys are here, it's twitch.tv/Sir Venom IK or at Sir_Venom_IK. We are going to do a question and answering portion here coming up here in just a little bit. If you guys have any questions for myself or Mr. Kami, at Sir Venom IK right there in the chat, and I will copy pasta those over to my page, and then we will answer those a little bit later on. All right, Pan-European DDs have been announced, and we've seen these things. If any of you guys have ever played the Friesland, this is basically your play style, except Friesland doesn't have torps. These things have ridiculous torps. Very fast. I'm thinking 80. I think they said 75 to 86 knots or something like that at 15 kilometers, but they hit like nothing. So
think about it. 86 knots, Venom.
86 knots, man. That's insane.
Aren't most of the ships, I believe, Swiss or something?
It's Swedish, if I remember correctly. I think a lot of it is Swedish. But two guns, really fast firing, two really fast firing turrets of 2 guns apiece, so 4 guns on each of these. No smoke again on these, and a relatively high detectability from what I could gather by the numbers. So you're playing these mid range, and you're dropping very fast torpedoes. It's just going to be a nightmare for DDs. It's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, you start looking at how the DDs have progressed, right, from the beginning of the game. Shimakaze and gearing. You had very set styles, right? You had a torp boat and a gunboat. Then you had the introduction of the German DDs and so forth. Each of those tend to have their own flavor, but as ships has gotten longer in the tooth, and added more nations and added more ships, you run out of things to do. You run out of gimmicks, right? You run out of
yeah. And this is something that they have said. I know when they were talking about the Smolensk and the Colbert, which nobody thinks is overpowered, but I think it's more overpowered than the Smolensk is. But that's just me. They have said we are trying to introduce new gameplay to keep the game relatively fresh. I kind of argue that that's not really new gameplay. It's just gameplay turned to 11, because if you play a Colbert, you're basically playing an Atlanta, you're playing a Worcester, you're playing a Minotaur, but with more guns. And the same thing with a Smolensk. That's not any different than playing a Kutuzov, other than the smaller guns and faster guns.
Well, I think you do that with a lot of lines, right? You start to have to figure out that a lot of these ships are going to play a lot. That's why when you see reviews and things like that, the first question that a lot of people have is, "What's this ship play like?"
What's the ship play like? Yeah.
That's typically the first question, right? It's like, what ship would you compare this to?
What would you compare this to? Oh, well, I play this just like I play the Atlanta. Yeah, totally understand. I've done that review before.
And I think if ships get too far away from what has been tried and true, you could have an issue where it's like the ship either is really overpowered because no one knows how exactly to play against it.
Stalingrad.
Stalingrad was probably the first example of a large cruiser with great pin range. Everybody knows Stalingrad.
Right.
Kleber is another one that it's very much in its own lane. Yes, there was the Khabarovsk, but the Khabarovsk was not near what. Okay, so original Khabarovsk was definitely a menace. Was definitely a ship that was very hard to deal with. But honestly, now like the Kleber is one of those ships that you just like.
It took over that spot.
Yes.
Yeah, and is that a good thing? I mean, it's showing progression, and at least it's not another Russian ship that's ridiculous. Because if you've noticed it throughout the history of wargaming, that the most ridiculous ships tend to be the Russian ones. Now, is that by design? Probably, but is it a good thing? No. Is it a bad thing? No, I don't think so.
So we're going to use an example from a very long-standing game, World of Warcraft. We're going to use
All
this
right,
example, right?
shoot on.
They've announced Shadowlands, which is a new expansion next year, and everything's basically going back down to level 60. So they're basically,
Number
it was,
crunching.
yeah, it was getting way out of hand, right? You've seen it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
numbers were getting crazy. So they're basically going back to level 60, right? Do I think ships will ever be able to do that? I don't know, but would I love to see ships done? I joked about this actually the other day on my stream. If ships randomly just got reset and all we had was Japanese and American ships again, and what it would do to the community as a whole. I think it'd be great for April Fools or something, just where that's all you could play was the original Japanese ships and the original American ships, and that's all you had.
Right.
Do I think that's going to happen?
Oh
No, I
man,
think
bring back
I,
that old Tier 8 Fubuki, man. That thing was amazing.
I think ships is just going to continue to try to figure out how to increase gimmicks, how to do that. I think that's what they're going to do, and that's because they put themselves there. When you take lines, and this started. I would say probably the British light cruiser line was the very first line that I would say that started with. Originally, when that was tested, it had HE.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And they said the Minotaur with AT was too overpowered. It was too strong.
yes. So they found the gimmick of the special AP that it has. Since then, maybe before that, but that's the first one that I can remember. Every line that has came out has been something different. Something has to be unique.
Right.
And so on and so forth. Maybe British battleships. I don't remember British battleships came out
British
before
British battleships came out after the cruisers did, but I think that the turning point in this game where I started seeing a lot of the inconsistencies and go downhill when they took priority off of AP from battleships and having that knockout power to dink and dunk and playing long game. I think the game shifted into an area where it's not as. I don't think it's as good as it used to be. The game overall. Now I still have fun with it. I still play it, but I don't think the game. I think the game originally designed in that little triangle of doom, battleships over cruisers over destroyers over battleships, in that little triangle of doom that they had, it is no longer based around that anymore. And that started there at the British battleships.
Well, and I think you're talking about you're basically talking about rocks, paper, scissors, right? Like
Yeah.
everything
No,
had
the
a counter,
original, yeah.
right? Everybody had a counter, right? And CBs were kind of just like the nuke that came in and was really over the top, but we'll leave them out. But yes, typically, at the beginning of the game, there was counters. Ships had counters, um, and I think that like you said, that's lost. It's now just kind of a jumble
It's a big
of
blurred
everything,
lines
right?
where cruisers are doing way more to battleships than battleships are able to do to cruisers, and destroyers to cruisers at the same time. We were talking Kleber and its AP. It's definitely shifted off of that. Anyway, continue. Sorry about that.
Well, and I think that's the toughest thing, right? Is now that you've gone so far away from that, you can't get back to it.
No, I agree.
And I think it's just going to keep getting that way. I think it's going to keep going that way because every new line has to have some type of quote unquote flavor. If you release a line that is we'll say plain, good luck getting anybody to play it, right?
Well, I mean, this is kind of historically with the community from my point of view. Historically, with the community, they don't want average boats. They don't want balanced ships. They want the most broken, overpowered thing that you possibly can get, a la the Julius Caesar at Tier 5. Still one of the most strongest thing, averages more than a lot of the Tier 6 battleships does, and they attempted to fix it, and oh my God, the backlash off of that was insane. And I don't. Were you there when that was going down?
When what was?
The Julius Caesar proposed change from
Yeah.
going from tier 5 to tier 6, and
Yep.
and they threw a big old hissy fit. I paid for this ship. It should stay the way that it is. This is the reason why I bought it. Blah blah blah. I think that the community missed a very good opportunity to start getting balance in the game. And number one. Number two, it told Wargaming, we don't give a shit. We don't care if it's broken. We don't care. This is what we want. And they're going to continue off of that base of it doesn't matter anymore. We want broken stuff. They've continued to put out things that are ridiculous because that's what the public wants.
I tend to agree with you. I get that people bought a certain version of the ship. I get that from the consumer standpoint, right?
Right.
But from you got to think for the overall health of the game. And GC was a ship that should have never been released in its state that it was when it was sold. When it was sold, it was a ship that was already overpowered. And should have been balanced before it was even sold, right?
Well, their history behind that is also not very good either. I offer up the Graf Zeppelin as also one of those, but it wasn't overpowered then. It was a little underpowered, but that's another story.
Yes. So the way they went about doing that, and the whole GC thing. It was done poorly again. Again, it was another PR nightmare that I was at the company when that happened and trying to explain, all that. But I think if players would genuinely care about the overall health of the game, the buffs and nerfs have to happen, right? To anything
to balance it out.
Yes, in any game. In any game that happens, right? Call of Duty, if a gun's too overpowered, they nerf the shit out of it, right? Like that's what happens.
Or they just sell it in a box.
Correct. But players, made a big stink over it everywhere that Wargaming is going to nerf my favorite premium ship, and then they don't care.
Yep. And they stop and if you sign that EULA, then it's their property. They can do what they want to with it. Whether you're just basically leasing it at that point, you're leasing this item, and they can change it to fit whatever needs that they needed to fulfill. So I was when that happened, I was of the ilk of fuck your wallet. I don't give two fucks if you bought it. I want a balanced boat. Not only if you're going to balance this thing and then you can resell it to the new players, then what else was the opportunity there for that we missed out on because people threw so much of a fit? We talk about Belfast coming back. We can talk about Kudrsav coming back. Let's talk about the Grimmy, which I still think is not overpowered right now. That could come back. There was options for these boats that I don't personally have. That I actually now could get my hands on these things and go off and play them. So I think the community missed an opportunity to actually achieve some moderate ability of balance in the game by throwing a fit on that one.
Yeah, I tend to agree a little bit with that. I just feel like buffs and nerfs and things like that have to be done. And if you don't want to have that happen, then overall the health of the game is going to suffer. There are ships that have been, and there are ships still that are very overpowered. And I would say that, it take a lot to balance them. The Belfast is probably the biggest one. You would have to do a lot to balance that ship and
remove the hydro. It's fine.
And it comes out to there's very few of those ships in the game. Very, very few.
There's a very few. Smolensk jumps out at you right now. Belfast jumps out at you. Cooter, I never really thought the Kudrsav was overpowered to begin with, but a lot of people think it is.
Well, Kudrsav is a ship that, if you know how to play cruisers well and you know how to aim, is a ship that is very hard to deal with because of the range that it has.
Well, so is the Zao.
Well, Ant Dog said, but people bought it and you can't start nerfing ships they have already been. Yeah, you can. It's their game.
It's their game. They can do whatever they want.
In the end, they can do whatever they want.
And in the end, with the Julius Caesar fix, which they decided against, for better or for worse, they decided against it. If they had wanted to continue that, they would have said, we are changing this for the health of the game, and you guys would have had no say in it whatsoever, because you guys could have said something about it, and y'all did, but it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, I mean, they can make whatever changes they want. It's their game.
Right.
But I will say to that, they also listen. I mean, in that situation, they listen to the community for good or bad. But now, now you start looking at it. You start looking at it now. If something overpowered comes out, their rebuttal is gonna be, we tried to start balancing premiums, we tried to start balancing ships then, and there was a lot of outcry. So there's no real
we didn't.
rush to do it.
And that's where I went off on the opportunity that we missed as a community by not letting that one go through, or throwing such a big fit to where they felt it necessary to step back from that. But there is one hope. There is one hope for all future premiums out there, that if they come out and they're a little bit broken and overpowered, there is one hope for you guys. And the fact that they released the Smolensk for coal and not to buy, that they have the ability to go in and adjust it however they want to without any repercussions, legally or not, because they released it as a coal ship. This is why I'm telling people, John Bart's your number one to go to for coal, and then Smolensk number two, in that order. If you already got the John Bart, you then get the Smolensk, because you have an opportunity to play this now while it's broken, because eventually they're going to fix it.
It's just going to depend on what the spreadsheet says, Venom.
I think, spreadsheet approved, man. Spreadsheet approved. That's all I could. Spreadsheet saying you're having fun. We'll go into one more question here and one more train of thought that I just had, and then we'll start up the Q&A session, guys. We're hanging out with Kami Samurai, twitch.tv/Kami Samurai, and at Kami Samurai TV over on the Twitter, at Sir_Venom_IK here on the Twitter. If you guys have any questions for me or anything like that, go ahead and at SirVenomIK right here in the chat, and we can ask myself or Kami at the end of the show. All right, so we talked about spreadsheets just now, and this just kind of piqued my interest here that you brought that up. But I think, and I'm going to give my opinion here, and then I'm going to ask you a question about that opinion. I think that wargaming puts a little bit too much into spreadsheets. I think that when you basing a lot of things based solely off of spreadsheets, you miss the feel of what it's actually doing for the game. What was your impression while you were there, or while you're after, or before, of the spreadsheet mentality that wargaming has?
Well, you gotta see. There's a fine line between gathering data and looking at it in the real world, right? I think you have to gather the data, which is the correct thing to do. I mean, I think any game gathers data on everything, right? Number of players,
right?
All those things. But I feel like you also have to take the feel of the community as well. And the most recent one, of course, has been the Smolensk, right? The Smolensk, in a lot of circles, is deemed as an overpowered ship. But I would also say that if you look at the numbers of the Smolensk, that it has fallen dramatically. That is, I think, just because more and more players are acquiring it, and I think as more and more players acquire it, I honestly don't know what they're going to do to balance it.
I posed this out there because this is a tier 10 rank season, and they release arguably one of the most overpowered ships. I don't think it's necessarily overpowered. I think it's a very easy fix. Just pull the smoke off of it, and it's fine. That's my fix for it. Pull the smoke off of it. It can't go everywhere. You limit its ability to move around. That's my fix for the Smolensk. But they put it into a tier 10 rank season, and the bajillion people have this damn boat already. And when you're getting into games that are 3 Smolensks versus 2 Smolensks, are they getting good numbers? Are they getting good information when the win rate is, the win rate's only 50%? Well, you have 3 on one side, 2 on the other. Even if the 2 guys win, you're -1.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to all that because that wasn't, my
Right.
area when I worked there. But I would say, I would say, yes, they may put too much emphasis on the spreadsheet, but they also have to have the numbers to crunch, right? And I think that's where the meme was born. I just feel like Smolensk is a ship that it was the hot new thing, right? Like that's the reason why it's getting all the heat.
You saw that with the Belfast in that Tier 7 rank season. They released the Belfast and then immediately threw it into a Tier 7 rank season.
Well, I mean, it's the newest ship, and that's the newest season of quote unquote competitive mode. They're definitely gonna want people to play it. Now, do I think it's gonna continue? I mean, I think ranked is one of those things that goes through cycles. Typically, when you get into that 2 to 5 bracket, you hardly ever see cruisers. Um,
Yeah, I don't. You don't see too many of them. If you do, it's mostly the radar cruisers at that point, because
you know,
those cruisers have the most impact on the game. I think.
and those are the cruisers that really hurt the small ones, right? So I just think yes, the spreadsheet might be used too much, but the spreadsheet is also something that has to be done just for data gathering.
I
And
totally I tend to agree. You do need to get some kind of data out of it, but when you're making changes solely based on spreadsheets, I think you miss the mark a little bit. As we could see with the Yu Yang, they kind of just really missed the mark on that nerf. Uh, and my understanding of that, and if you guys don't know what this Yu Yang nerf was about, my understanding is that the Yu Yang was outperforming the gearing, which is pretty loosely based on what the gearing is loosely. Wait, the Yu Yang is loosely based on what the gearing is. A different kind of similar, and it was struggling. It was struggling. The gearing was struggling compared to what the Yu Yang was doing. So instead of buffing the gearing and putting it up to where it was, they nerfed the Yu Yang to get it back to where it's a little bit more even. And now you rarely see a Yu Yang anymore.
well, I think they nerfed the Yu Yang in the wrong way. The Yu Yang guns were fine. It was really the torps, right? Because it has those deep water torps, completely different style of torps than the gearing. Um, now, like you said, you don't see Yu Yangs very much. I think if the gun reload was the same, it'd be fine. I think it would definitely be a very viable ship, and add some
A unique flavor
you
to
know
the game. Having during that last rank season that the Yu Yang was available, that happened to be my fifth rank out to get my black. Playing that Yu Yang that rank season with radar on it was such a unique play style and such a hair raising event, trying to go around there, stay unspotted, still be effective with your radar and putting yourself into good positions. It was a very intricate gameplay, and I really really enjoyed that rank season, even though I don't like tier 10. Um, anyway, continue.
Yeah, I think I just feel like they could have done it a different way. If the guns would have kept the same, nerfing the torpedoes, I think that's okay. The torpedoes do a lot of damage because they were those deep water, low concealment torps. I think that's fine. You had to be more judicious on how you use the torpedoes. I think that's good. That makes you make choices. Definitely nerfing the gunboat aspect of a gunboat is going to make it really hard because what are you going to fight?
What else?
Shimikazes?
What else? What else are you going to be able to do?
And Shimikazes, if spec correctly, can keep up with you, right? So you don't even have an advantage over a quote unquote torp boat anymore.
Well,
So
Shimikazes will outdo you just based on alpha now. But
you, you
anyway,
know,
that's
so
besides the point. But back then they didn't have the alpha change yet. So I agree. I think they missed a mark on a couple of things. I think going back to what Kami said, I think they relied a little bit too much on them. But you'd still need that. And when they nerf things, sometimes they just nerf the wrong thing on the boat. This doesn't need to be nerfed. Blah blah blah. It's not unusual gameplay, just like the Smolensk. If you does it really need the smoke to be effective?
hold on, Venom. So Down and Dirty said, um, but they are biased if you're only allowing super testers slash Unicum players to use them. I'll let you know that the super test program is not based on stats. There are people in the super test program that have all levels of stats. The super test program is designed that way. And Unicum players, I mean, there is like clan testing, which typically are Unicum players, but you got to think, they are, balanced between a lot of different things, not just super test Unicum players and things like that. But yes, super test is not strictly Unicum players.
All right. So there it is, boys. There's our takes on the Puerto Rico. There's our takes on a couple other things that were just kind of random that we kind of went with the flow. And I really appreciate Kami for coming on to the podcast this week. It's kind of a short notice. I do appreciate you coming up and asking to be on the podcast. That was awesome. So if you have any other things that you'd like to touch on before we get out of here, before we start our Q&A session, and guys, y'all still have time to get questions in at ServantMIK right there in the chat, and then we'll do those questions. But last comments on the Puerto Rico or anything else we talked about today?
I would just say when it comes to if you're talking to the community member, other community members, or you're talking to community employees for wargaming, try to do it respectfully. I know people are upset. I know people are mad. I know people have a lot of anger about things that have happened recently with Puerto Rico. But I would say just do it respectfully. Talk to them like you would like to be talked to. And just know that there are hundreds of employees for wargaming, and hundreds of employees that work on ships, and just do your best to try to keep it as civil as possible. I get it. It's a rough subject, and there's been more than one that have happened recently. But just it's like that old don't shoot the messenger type of thing, right? Like just try to do your best to have a polite conversation, and I'm sure they'll be glad to talk to you again.
All right, there it is. That's everything that I've got to want to talk about. Now let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A session here. The first question is, how is Little Duck doing?
Little Duck's good. Little Duck's actually getting changed right now. Sarfa, and to answer your question, no, I don't want you to lie and deceive them. I just want you to try to do it politely. You could be mad all you want, but you don't have to be abusive to people. You got to remember they are people as well.
All right, there you go. Krieger, I sent a couple of questionnaires out to the community contributors out there if they had any questions for you, and the only one that came back was Mr. Krieger says, "How much do you miss Sub Octavian?"
That's a great question. I don't miss Sub Octavian at all.
All right, there you go. Tamo, coming from the 5-Inch Clan, Tamo says, "Do you have any Mo Like It stories?"
Mo Like It. Hey, Mo. I have a great story about Mo. And it involves my Yamato and his Moskva.
All right.
Yeah. And I think we were playing Tears of the Cruiser, or Tears of the Desert.
Yep.
And he decided to show a little too much side, and I think I 38K'd him or something from across the map.
38K from across the map.
And the best part about it is I actually got to meet Mo. I got to meet Mo in person down in the
South Carolina.
Yeah, and we had a good laugh about that. Mo's a good guy, but it was a lot of fun. And every time I talk to Mo, I think I bring that story up. He probably wants to.
Anytime he's in the chat, you're in the chat. He's always, "Hey, how'd that Moskva taste?" Mo always likes to say it's aim hacks. Aim hacks. So you're doing something right there, Kami.
But Mo knows it's not aim hacks because I stream it.
So did some other person, but that's another story too.
Where's that clip at? I wish I still I don't even know if I still have that clip.
I don't think I've ever seen that clip. Mo, you have to go find it. Hidden aim hacks. There you go. I got accused of abusing community contributor matchmaking the other day. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's what you use, right? That's how you get the good matchmaking.
That's how we get the good matchmaking. 150.
I used to use my employee matchmaking, so I didn't see CVs, right?
Yeah, there you go. Look at the numbers. They actually released that information to the public the other day in a non-NDA channel of what percentage of games at what tier are seeing CVs, how many are seeing 1, how many are seeing 2, and how many are seeing 3. And it was very interesting to see that tier 9 and tier 7 had the lowest amount of CV games overall.
Well, I think that has to do with CVs being 8 and 10, right?
8 and 10. I probably that's what it was. But yeah, so guys, go out and play 7 and 9. You'll see less CVs than anything else, according to the numbers. If you don't cap and then challenge a cap, I hate giving caps to enemies to gain free points for 10 minutes. That's what we're talking about, the priorities in ranked games.
So the way you look at a ranked game, typically there's 3 caps, right? So unless teams do something really interesting, or they send ships to contest a cap. Typically, each team gets a cap. I'm not going to say for free, but it's close to free, right? Because you tend to,
Relatively unchallenged. So.
depending on how the spawns happen, right? Typically, one team spawns closer to A, one team spawns closer to C, and then you fight over B. But just depending on how the map plays out, you shouldn't be giving over all the caps for free. And the way you got to look at it is ranked games tend to last a long time if people are staying alive. So there'll be plenty of opportunities if done correctly to get back into those caps and that as the battle develops, ships move around, ships shift from side to side. Typically you even see teams cap the original cap that you had because your whole team is concentrated on defending a different cap. So just again, that's learning the map. That's paying attention to the map, knowing where ships are, especially if you're a DD, knowing where the radar is. If you're a battleship, know where the radar cruisers are. There's all kinds of different things you got to take into account. But typically, you don't give away caps and they just stay free.
I think going a little bit deeper than that, I think it's understanding how the game has flowed. If you're going and everybody's going one direction and you see all of them and understanding that the flow of the game has pulled them off of that cap, you as a destroyer can turn around and go back the other direction and go against the grain, as it were, and go back into those caps and secure yourself some points and maybe even get those cross torps that everybody loves to do. Down and Dirty says players are more worried about saving the star than winning the match. Most of them are.
Yeah, that's the problem with the save a star system, right? Is you either play to win or you play to save your star. Sometimes those coincide, but very rarely do they. And I think that's also depending on the ship you play, right? Like if you play
a DD, you're almost not gonna save a star at this juncture.
But if you play your DD to help win the game, everybody gets a star. So
everybody gets a star, absolutely.
That's the biggest thing, right? Is as a DD player, you got to realize you got to do your best to help the team, right? Because more than likely, unless you have a super duper game, you're probably not going to keep your star. Whereas a damage farming cruiser or a battleship, that is, they tend to have better chances because of the way it's played.
Agreed. Now, before we move on here, I skipped one section of the deal, and I want to do it now. We do have a new feature here on the Across Your Bow podcast. It's called Ship of the Week. Now, last week I asked Mr. Moto to choose a boat, and people would send me screenshots of that boat, and then take the top two guys, and I would give them some of my community contributor container codes. Last week was the Duca d'Aosta, or whatever the Tier 6 Italian premium is. And we have that winner, and I've sent him his code already. So I ask you this week, choose a boat, any boat, doesn't matter, one boat you like, boat that you don't like, and let them have that challenge. And if they link it to me in my Discord channel on the proper channel, then they will, whoever the top two guys will receive container codes or camo codes, whatever I have left. So choose a boat.
What do they got to do?
Just screenshots, high game, damage, solo war, anything super spectacular.
I mean, there's only one. You already know the ship I'm going to pick.
Fuso.
There you go.
All right, so Fuso it is, guys. Tier 6 Japanese battleship. You guys go out there, play the Fuso this week, put up some good numbers, and send them to me in the Discord there. There is a channel. I tell you exactly what it's called, but it's basically called Ship of the Week, and you guys can put the links, the screenshots in there, and I will hook you guys up next time we're here, or next Tuesday. I will draw the winners or look at the winners and see who won, and then send them their codes. So there you go. So there, the Fuso it is. All right, moving back into the Q&A. Guys, we're hanging out with Kami Samurai at Kami Samurai TV over on the Twitter, over at twitch.tv/Kami Samurai. Go over there and give him a follow. Really good dude, really helpful. Pretty above average player there.
I mean, Mo, you're not going to win calling it that.
Gunsman Song asks, how much was the PFE? That's Prince Idol to Frederick. If you had to buy and then grind the piss out of it to get the steel. That I don't remember. I don't remember how much it was.
Yeah, I don't remember either. But it wasn't this bad.
It was a grind. Only part of it that made it a rough grind is that boat is a piece of shit.
that,
That was the only part when you had to go back and play that boat to get the rest of those directives done to get the, to finish out and get your steel. That was probably the hardest part of that grind because that boat is just awful.
yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't great.
Yeah. Jeremy something PM says, man, I'm not salty. I'm glad the community gave me the 411 on the grind before I got it started. Not even going to attempt it. My problem is that they sell boosters for a grind that cannot be obtained. That was talking about the Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I mean, at least you got the 401 before you did it, right?
Yep. Don't spend the money if you're not going to. So that leads me to just another question. Now we've kind of already touched on it a little bit, but just for reiteration here, I personally don't think the Puerto Rico grind. I don't think the boat is worth that much effort. Maybe 3/4 of this effort, maybe even half of the effort that you have to put out there, because I just don't think the boat is all that great overall.
So there's two, I think there's two standpoints, right? From the collector standpoint that loves to have every ship, I think it's probably worth it to them. If they want to go through it or buy it or however they want to acquire it.
Right.
But from an overall playing the game standpoint, it's not great. It's not a ship like I said earlier, just go play the Alaska.
Yeah, pretty much. You'll get better results out of the Alaska. Gusman Songs also asks, even in the past, Puerto Rico, most events is still behind RNG loot crates.
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, like,
there's so many events in this game.
There are. I mean, I think what he's talking about is that you have to play the Italian ships to get these Italian containers to unlock this other thing, so you could do something else. I always find those grinds very tedious because my RNG in this game is nil. It's very, very bad. And so I feel like I get screwed over quite a bit when it comes to you have to have good luck to get this mission out of the box. And I end up getting 1 out of the 7 missions that you possibly could get, and we get 15, 20 boxes being a community contributor just on our own, or however many boxes they give us. And then you do the directives and you get more boxes, and you just really don't see a whole lot of result from some of those.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many events, and you think about all the different events that happen every month in this game. I mean, they're so tough to track now.
Yeah, I kind of lost track after the Cossack. The last event that of a ship that I thought was actually badass was the Coxsack. I love that thing.
And the Coxsack.
Yeah, the Coxsack. If anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, Tier 8 premium British destroyer. I think it's probably one of the best boats they put out all last year, followed by the Boise Nuevi, the Julio. So there you go. They have not released any new operations in a while. No, they have not, and I don't know why. Don't know why. Do you have any ideas?
Because they keep breaking other stuff? I don't know.
Priority list, I guess. It's
Probably.
priority. They focus really, really, really hard on CVs and pull a lot of resources into the CVs. So I mean, what happened to hard mode? Hard mode was supposed to be coming out, but I think I have an answer for what happened to hard mode. Kami, you ready for this?
What's up?
All right, so here's my theory. Here's more conspiracy tinfoil hat. Put your tinfoil hats back on. Conspiracy theories are they made changes to the co-op bots not too long, about 1.5 years ago or so. And the bots got so hard for the people that only play co-op that they lost their win rate by 3 or 4 points, and everybody threw a goddamn fit, and they canceled it. And they said no. So this is the reason why you don't have hard mode anymore.
Damn hard mode bots. Those bots being tough.
Them bots being too accurate. The bots are too accurate at Tier 9, my friend. You know who I'm talking about. Eric Holt says, yeah, it feels like the bad ideas of all of your DDs die while the enemy has a submarine. You basically just lose.
Probably. I don't know how else to answer that. Probably.
No, I mean, without actually having to play it, we could just speculate. So So probably. Down and Dirty Track says, let's just say the developers at Wargamings are masters of squeezing juice out of a penny.
Yeah. I mean, that's why there's whales, right?
Thank you, Wales. Sub said you have to have all the mods and flags to make the grind, so what you get is only replaces what you spent.
Ask Sub if he's done it.
No. I can guarantee he says no. B. Gearing says, kind of problem with the historical game, though, since that's how it's worked in reality. Well, I never really put a lot of reality on this game because it's really not based in reality. Because if it was based on reality, that Yamato shell on that DD would split it in fucking half going through that boat. Speaking of that.
It's an arcade shooter.
Yeah, it's an arcade shooter. The renowned and feared Swiss Navy for the U.S. Or for the Pan-European line coming out. That's a little comment there. They try to fix a premium ship. It's not what we wanted. They sold the premium ship that was broken. I think that's also a lot of feedback when people are, especially on the Julius Caesar, they sold it broken.
Yeah. I mean, they did. I mean, you got to think. So, you look at the way premiums are balanced now and how much testing time goes into them now compared to what they used to be. There's a lot more time to find that stuff now.
Right.
I'm not saying they listen or anything, but at least they put in the time.
Ant Dog, there goes a long way. This goes all the way back to when the Kudasov was released. Players complained that the money was not worth it, so Wargaming's developed this thing called IFHE. I think, other than the British battleships, IFHE was probably the worst thing that they could have done for the game. And I think that they should actually remove IFHE altogether. Now, we have heard and we have read a podcast 2 weeks ago all about the IFHE changes and what it was going to mean and what we were going to have to be able to do. Everybody was fine with the damage people were doing. Maybe they were, I'm not getting enough damage on things before they put out IFHE. Take it away. Just take it away. It'll be fine. Everybody's going to get the same amount of fires. Everybody's going to get the same amount of damage. And it's just, I don't know. What do you think on IFHE?
I mean, I think IFHE is a skill that allows ships with smaller guns to deal damage to ships with thicker armor, right? Like that's what it's designed to do.
Right.
It's the fire. It's the fire component. I think that's the really is the component that really is tough to balance out because you can't take the fire component all the way away because it's an HE shell. But I mean, you think about ships like the Henri with IFHE, right?
Yeah.
It loses a couple percent in fire chance, but still just lights everything on fire and does the alpha.
And 51%
right? So,
millimeters of armor pin.
So I don't know. IFHE, going all the way back to the beginning of his question about the Kutuzov was fine before IFHE. I mean, when you think about you got to remember too, the game has changed so much over the years. Whereas when the Kutuzov came out, the Kutuzov was incredibly powerful when it came out, and only got more powerful when IFHE became a captain skill. I honestly would like to see captain skills completely redone again, like they did a few years ago, and again adapt the game to some new captain skills and have everything change again. But will they do that? I don't know.
I would agree with that. I've been a big proponent of fire prevention not being worth it. Simply for the fact that fire prevention is a misleading title, saying you're going to prevent fires when it really doesn't prevent fires. You prevent 10% of fires. So that doesn't mean you start out at 90%. That means that Conqueror, well, it used to be Big Gun Conqueror, but that Thunder with 65% fire chance is not going to hit you for 10% off of that. You don't start out at 55%. You start out at minus 6.5%, which is 10% of the enemies. So that 10% on that thing is very misleading. And even if you're on three fires, you're on three fires constantly. constantly. So it's kind of it doesn't seem like it does enough. Now with the IFHE changer, they're really nutting the fire chance in half now, as opposed to 1 or 3%. I think that if this actually works, then fire prevention actually comes worth it.
Yeah, I mean that comes down to the multiplicative, formula that is used. So, I mean, that's a lot of numbers and bullshit that I'm not going to get into.
Right. Down at Dirty Track says, wait, you want to use a spreadsheet on a battle data, and then maybe they'll also give some of the test ships to sub-average players as well. I know we've already addressed that. To community contributors and myself range from good players, really good players, to I only play co-op players. I know several. Well, I know of one community contributor that only plays co-op. And then the super testers go along that same route. I don't know about only playing co-op, but I know some very not so great super testers, and I know some very good super testers. So there's a wide range of testing that is being done, and Kami can give us a little bit more on that.
Oh, what are we talking about? Super testing?
Yeah, just the range of players. So just reiterate what you said earlier.
Oh yeah. So super test is full of hundreds of players, and they range from all skill levels. It's not completely full of unicoms. It's not completely full of
bad people.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Trentino asked the question. I had a Puerto Rico in my last game. How is this possible? You can spend the 24,000 doubloons to buy all the boosts right away, and then after that, you can spend another 35,000 doubloons to finish it. So if you do it that way, it's $236 according to the website. All right, Sauce3 says, will we ever see performance-based matchmaking in this Soviet game? Do you agree that if the newbies were all placed in games with one another, they'd have a chance to learn the game rather than spend 20 minutes loading in, waiting, and driving their mega slow ship to be instantly sunk and newbie left not learning a single thing other than their time was wasted? The answer to the question is we'll never see a skill-based matchmaking.
No. The answer is no and never.
And the reason I say no, and Kami has his own reasons, but my reason for it is what do you consider skill? PR is a made-up number. Unicum is a made-up number. It has no bearing on whether you're good or not, because I have sat there and seen it. Kami sat there and seen it. I've listened to other community contributors and other streamers say, I need to go play my wacky tanky now because my PR rating has dropped for the day. I need to go play my tier 3 to boost it back up. So it's what are you going to base skill off of? Damage? Well, that's boostable. Wins? That's about the only thing that you can do, and that's the way they balance matchmaking now, from what I understand. Anyway, what do you think, Kami?
I've answered this question hundreds of times when I work for him. There'll never be skill-based matchmaking. One, the population isn't big enough to support it. There's not enough players at any given time to support a skill-based matchmaking. You need to have not tens of thousands of players, but 50s of thousands of players to support that. To find games at a reasonable amount of time. That's part of the issue too. Is you look at the server population. Yes, it gets up to 15, 16K sometimes. I don't even know if it's gotten that high lately. But you need 2 or 3 times that to get skill-based matchmaking to even think about making it work, and it's not going to happen. You got to think of that. You got to think ships is 4.5 years old, or almost 4.5 years old. It's going to lose more players before it gains players, and you're not going to get skill-based matchmaking.
And the players that you gain are new players. They're not very seldom are they reoccurring players. So no, I agree with Kami. I don't think skill-based matchmaking. Number one, I don't see how you'll ever get it to work, and number two, I agree with him that there's not enough people to make it work. I know a lot of people out there. Riot does it. Well, Riot also has millions of fucking players, and Wargaming has tens of thousands of players.
Yeah. How many players are online? How many players are online on Riot at any given time?
Millions.
It's an absurd comparison.
Yeah. All right, there you go. The problem with balancing with a hammer is that when when you make a huge systematic change, i.e., IFHE, people who rely on that skill will be furious when it's removed or changed. No one knew they needed IFHE until they added the skill. I think with everything, it goes down to human nature. When you put in something and it makes it just a little bit easier for you to get damage, and then you change that, people don't like change, period. I don't like to change. Kami doesn't like to change, other than changing my underwear. Uh, People just don't like to have to relearn things that they already know over and over and over again. And I think that goes a long way with a lot of animosity from the community, not just because of the Puerto Rico, not just because of CVs, well, partly the CVs, because you have to relearn how to play the game again. And I know I've done it many times. I know Kami, you've done it a few times as well. What do you think?
Well, you got to think. You got to think that the population of this game is the mean or the average of this game is a lot higher than any other game. You know, um,
What do you mean, age wise?
age wise,
Okay.
right? Like age wise, you got to think a lot of the players that play this game are older, like demographic wise. Older than us, right? Like they're older than us is the average demographic. So of course you don't like change. I don't like change. You don't like change, and most people don't like change. But that's what happens with the game. It has to change, and um, you know a lot of people don't like it. But if games don't change, they die.
Yeah,
That's just plain and simple.
agreed. And from what we're seeing now, regardless of CVs, we could have let those die for all I care. But but for the rest of the game, they're really not putting in any new gameplay. It's just rehash of old gameplay, and the only really new things that we're seeing, the French CDs, that was brand new. That was uh, a new kind of concept. We had the old kebab Ross and the old trash can that played similar, but not to that extent. Smolensk is not a new gameplay. Colbert's not new gameplay. The next new gameplay that we have scheduled is the Pan-European TD line. That is new gameplay. So you're seeing a lot of rehash of it because, as we said before, copy pasta boats because it's easy.
Yep, and you're going to see more of them. I mean, the copy pasta boats will never go away.
No. I think I remember reading something. Sub Octavian said, "How many different Fletcher classes were there? How many different Fletcher class boats were there?" And we could just stick another name on one, and there's 900 plus of these things. So I mean, you could see a slew of them at Tier 9. So there you go. Italian SAP, relatively new gameplay, I guess. Thank you for bringing that up, Meat Puppet. What do you think of the SAP? A lot of people don't like it.
I think it's another gimmick. It's great against destroyers, but that's it.
That's probably about it. I've said it many times before, and I'll say it a lot again. The players that have a lot of real raw skill and have played the game for a long time are going to figure out a way to make the Italians beautiful. They're going to make the Italians, and they're going to use them to their utmost effectiveness. For the average player, they're not going to like them because there's no extra free damage that you get because of fires. So 100,000 damage in a Smolensk, you probably got a lot of fire damage. 100,000 damage in the Italian bird, you did all that yourself. So you have a better sense of accomplishment, I think, in the Italian ships if you do well.
Yep.
But anyway, man, that is all the questions that I have for you. That's it, man. Episode 40 of the Cross Your Bow podcast is in your books. Kami Samurai. Tell them where they can find you. Tell them your schedule so they can come by and check out your channel, man. Promote yourself here.
All right, yeah. You can find me at twitch.tv/kamisamurai. You can also find me at Kamisamurai TV on Twitter. I typically stream from about 1 in the afternoon till 6 at night on every weekday. That's Central Time. But I will not actually be around for the rest of the year. I'm actually going back to California to see family and friends, taking the little man back. He's gonna get to spend his first Christmas back with the family, so that's gonna be pretty awesome. But once we get back and the new year happens, we'll be back on every day, playing boats, helping people out. So feel free to stop by, ask questions. I do my best to try to show what I'm doing, explain what I'm doing. Sometimes the salt flows a little bit, especially if there's a CV in the game. But That happens with all of us, right?
I know in rank season it does. I'm still of the ilk that CVs have no business in competitive anything. Take them out. But that's my 2 cents. Kami, guys, twitch.tv/kamisamurai at kamisamurai TV over on the Twitter. Guys, go over there, give him some follows, follow his social media, get all the updates when he goes live and all the random musings that he likes to put out there, and pictures and memes and Darth Maul on his shirt. I am Sir Venom IK. You guys can hit me up at twitch.tv/Sir Venom IK or over at the Twitter, Sir_Venom_IK, and get all those updates when I do go live as well. Guys, go out there, play the Fuso. Give me some links. Give me some screenshots right there. Discord.gg/Sir Venom IK. If you guys are want to know, this will be up on YouTube probably tomorrow after I get done with the show tonight. I will probably go to bed and then clip it out and put it up tomorrow. So you guys can look at that at youtube.com/Sir Venom IK. I love you, man. Kami, thank you very much again for coming on to the podcast. Maybe if you enjoyed yourself, man, maybe we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, maybe we'll see how the game develops in the new year and see when we can find another date.
Oh yeah, man. We'll make it. We'll have a bro date. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it, man. Episode 40 is now in the books. So we thank you very much for watching. I am Sir Venom IK, and that is Kami. Kami, say goodbye to him.
Have a good one, everybody.
All right, we'll see you guys after the first of the new year with Overlord Bo sometime in the first week of January. I love you guys. We'll see y'all next time.